Let's talk a bit about harnesses. There's a two-step question. The first one is, what's the major differences between seated and pods, and for an average pilot to choose, and what to consider? And the second question is ABS systems, how they work, what they are.
Okay.
Can you make one yourself?
Yeah.
Somehow improving the harness to make it more stable or not? Or,
Yeah.
So let's start with the simple thing, like switching harnesses.
Yeah. So I think between a pod and a seated harness, it's two very different styles of flying. In a pod harness, you're lying down, you have a way more aerodynamic feeling in the air and also aerodynamic shape. Everything is more cross-country oriented. But you get also more twisting movements, and you get a little more instability also weight shift wise, because you get a little less precise. But if you get really used to it, it's quite manageable. And on the seated harness, your aerodynamic profile is rubbish, but you have a lot less twisting movement, you are a lot less in control for weight shifting, for everything, and you get a position which is kind of more relaxed, I would say, than a pod harness. But I would say the main difference is protection wise. Globally, the pod harness tends to have a lot less protection than the seated harness. So if you crash on a pod harness, usually the injuries are worse than on a normal harness. That is kind of a fact.
Especially the light ones.
Yeah, the light ones are terrible. I mean, if you have a light harness, don't expect the protection to be as good as a non-light one. It's not possible. You have to make compromises if you buy light. That's it. But basically, I would say that if you want to fly cross country, it's not compulsory to have a pod harness. It's nice to have one, but it's not compulsory. If you want to fly acro, it's compulsory to have a seated harness. That is non-negotiable.
It's really hard to do helis with a pod out.
It's not nice, and no, anyway, you need a seated harness. But I don't think there is a huge difference. It's just two different mindsets of flying, in a flight, I think, in my opinion.
Follow up with that, people talk about for the test safety as well between pod and that it's tested on the seat and not on the pod and all that.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a rule which is because it's easier to test all gliders with the same harness. So you have to kind of do that. And also, back in the days, everything was done on a seated harness. So all the rules, everything was done with a seated harness. But it doesn't change much to fly a pod harness and a seated harness in terms of glider behavior. It changes in terms of pilot's behavior when you are in a struggled situation, when you are in trouble. But the thing is that the test is happening before the trouble. So it's everything that happens before you are in trouble. It's how the wing react to keep you out of trouble. So the pilot's reaction are not important in the test because they are null normally. And whether you have a pod harness or a seated harness, it should be the exact same. Okay? So basically, in my opinion, it's totally okay to do all the certification with a seated harness because it just doesn't make sense to have a pilot reaction. So whether you are flying a pod harness or a seated harness, it doesn't make a difference for the tests themselves. Then, as a pilot, of course, you get higher risk of getting twisted in a pod harness than in a seated harness. But in the end, it's not that big also because you get a higher risk, but that in specific situations, which does not happen so often.
Yeah, and all you need to do is put your legs down.
Yeah, exactly. And if you are in trouble, you put your legs down and you sit it again. Yeah. Exactly. So,
okay.
And the ABS.
Yeah.
So the ABS is, I think it's anti-balance system. That's
active balance system.
Maybe? Active, maybe.
Something
I don't know.
Like that,
so I think it's active balance system. Anyway, in other words, it's the two straps that are going from the front, so from the waist strap to almost the seat board, so to the seat plate. It goes from almost the middle of the leg strap to the the main strap, which is going to the seat plate. And this ABS is supposed to manage the stability of your harness weight shift wise. So basically, with really loose ABS, if you are weight shifting a lot, then your seatboard is gonna move a lot without anything to counterbalance it, and you're gonna be able to put huge weight shifts. With a really tight ABS, if you are moving your weight shift a lot, then your ABS is gonna enter into tension, and then it's gonna kind of balance you a little more flatter, and it's gonna prevent you from putting a huge weight shift. On most harnesses, this is not possible to trim. I don't know really any regular harnesses where you can trim it except the acro harnesses.
Nowadays it's for the com harnesses.
Okay, they get the trimmed ABS, but for beginners you cannot trim the ABS.
No, not
and yeah, from the comp harnesses you can trim them. Acro is really common to be able to trim the ABS. In my opinion, I like kind of not so loose ABS, so kind of a tight ABS, because it prevents you from doing unwanted weight shifts, and it prevents you from going too big on your weight shift. While really loose ABS will make that the weight shift have a huge impact on your wing, and since most of the time our weight shifts are not the correct ones, it's better to have a tight ABS.
And the shoulder strap here,
the waist strap.
Sorry, yes. Waist strap showing. When you loosen it and tighten it, it has a similar effect.
Yeah, it has two effects. The waist strap, if you tighten it, it makes the balance a bit more stable, so the weight shifts are a bit harder, and the twists are easier, basically, with a smaller waist strap, because your angle is closer. Yeah, and with a more open, you get more instability in the weight shift, but the twists are not that easy. That is why we can trim the ABS, because for example in acro we like to have a pretty stable harness but an open waist strap to get not twisted so easily. All right, so that's why it's nice for us to have trimmed.
So you basically open that and then
close the bit, exactly, to be stable. And some acro pilots like the opposite way around, but most of them like open and close the ABS.
So for a regular pilot in the normal harness, it's basically it's not quite ABS, but you regulate the sensitivity.
Yeah, you regulate the sensitivity by the opening of the waist strap. And for most of the pilots, I would suggest to keep it halfway closed, which is a certified 42 centimeters, more or less. And sometimes it's fully closed to be 42 centimeters. But I would say that it's a personal feeling. It's kind of trimming your brakes, you know. It's like you like to have your brakes long, you like to have your brakes short, and you like to have your harness sensitive, or you like to have your harness not that sensitive. But more and more, the waist strap is not possible to trim. For example, on the lights, hike and fly harnesses, you can't trim the waist strap in most of them.
Add paragliding line and you shorten
Yeah, exactly. That's the only
that's
way.
What
but
I've done for mine, because it's too sensitive, and I just tighten it myself.
Yeah, and more it's not possible to tighten it. So.
Yeah, and I miss that. I don't think you're gonna lose a lot of weight. You're not gonna add much more weight for a strap.
Yeah, I don't know why.
I do personally for the waist strap in cross country. I do it a lot. I'll tighten and loosen depending on the conditions. If it's too, because I don't have a preferred setting. I just use whatever feels right in the moment, and so I agree with that. That it's a feeling based.
Yeah.
And as long as you understand the differences between, okay, if it's too tight, maybe you have a riser. If it's too loose, you have a
it's part of those trims that are feeling based, like the brakes setting. You know, it should not be too short, should not be too long, but in between you can choose whatever feels best to you.
As long as you can control it.
Yeah, exactly.
Our arms are different.
Also,
it's everybody. I use a lot of wraps, and I do adjust the brakes as well. So I have my
preferred position.
Yeah. Like I flew your wing before X-Alps, and it was, I kept stalling, and it was like, what the?
I have really short brakes, but that's because I started to fly very young, you know. When I started to fly, I was 12, and I had really short arms, so I had really short brakes because I needed short brakes, and so I got used to it. And now I have really short brakes because that's, and like most of the girls have really short brakes as well, because most of the girls are slightly smaller, they get shorter arms, and they get shorter brakes.
Okay.
And they fly with shorter brakes. That's why you see most of the girls, like in acro, trying to stand up in the harness to go hands up, because their hand length being shorter, you know, they don't have the same brake range as a guy which is a meter and 90 centimeters tall, you know.
Does it help if you shorten the risers or something?
No, it doesn't, because it changes the behavior of the wing quite a lot. Like 2 centimeters less on the riser changes the behavior a lot.
Yeah, of course.
No, I mean, if you are a small person, then you need to make with what you
Yeah.
get, and you won't fly worse because you get.
Yeah, it's just adjusting
It's just
to your
adjusting to
reality.
your body length, and
Yeah.
we kind of often mistake the fact that girls have really short breaks, and it's because they have less strength, while in fact it's not about strength, it's about physiology,
Yeah,
Like,
just
you get shorter
limitations of
hands, you need
your body
shorter
is
breaks.
different.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was funny to fly because we did a bit of cross country with that wing, and
Yeah.
I was flying like this all
Yeah,
the time.
yeah, I get really short breaks. Yeah, and when I go on speed bar, you have to release the brakes and hold them
Yeah,
tight. Yeah.
I got there, but
Yeah.
it was hard to take off with that.
Yeah. And if you are used to make hand wraps and you take off with hand wraps, it's legs and it's terrible. Yeah.
I inflate without, but
Yeah.
the first thing I do is a wrap.
Yeah,
For
and
me,
then, yeah.
it's that's what I'm used to.